So I want to explain this chart, which is one way of dealing with the constellation of symptoms for someone who is a sociopath. And the term that's used now is more antisocial behavior. And what I want to do is just share my understanding of it. I'm not a licensed therapist. I work at a drug and alcohol rehab center. In the general population, about 1 out of 200 people are sociopaths. And that's about 1/2 of 1%. So it's fairly common. In the population that we deal with, it's more like 1 out of 7, about 16%. So when we see someone who has signs of a sociopath, we sit down and talk with them, and we want to help them. And one approach is to use this checklist. And you can't connect with everyone, but let's say you have a fairly good relationship with someone, they're in a good mood, you sit down and talk with them. Or it can be when they're upset and say, well, let's talk. And I would say people who are out of control don't want to be out of control. And so might ask them some questions to see if they're oriented to reality. Say, do you know what day it is? Do you know who's president? And then I might ask them about I'm going to ask you some questions. They may seem strange, but to establish a baseline. And so I might begin with low self-esteem. It's kind of a safer place to start. The main one is really emotional dysregulation. Do they have a difficult time controlling their emotions? So I'll say, how's your self-esteem? How would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best? And by giving it a number, it helps them focus on that area of their lives. And it really doesn't matter how someone else might rate their own self-esteem, but it's establishing a baseline and then helping them to improve in that area. So what a 5 means to one person may be different than what a 5 means to someone else. I would say I'm a solid 7. But, so I'll say, how would you rate your self-esteem? And they might say 2, they might say 10, they might say a million. And so teenagers tend to give often kind of strange answers out of insecurity. And I'll work through the list. Problems in relationships. How do you feel the quality of your relationships are on a scale of 1 to 10? And often they'll begin to tell you their life story, which is fine, but I do try to get through all the symptoms in one sitting. So I'll say, do you have fears of abandonment? Do you have suicidal thoughts? Are you very impulsive? Do you have self-judgments? Do you have difficulty in problem solving? Typically people who are sociopaths have a very short attention span. And so one technique that's very helpful is called mindfulness, which is the politically correct term for meditation. And we had a woman come and speak at our workplace, and she was the clinical director for a federal prison in downtown Phoenix. It looks like an office building, but it's actually a prison. And she said one of the most popular classes was on mindfulness. And I've conducted classes on mindfulness. I have clients sit in comfy chairs, maybe turn down the lights. We might have a discussion about whether they meditate, and we might play soothing music, and sometimes you have to keep people from falling asleep, but just let them relax. And the class is usually about an hour long, and then sometimes it's a good opportunity to talk to people after the class, and if they have issues. And so the next symptom is anxiety about emotional dysregulation. So they will not only have difficulty in controlling their emotions, but also have anxiety about it. Attempts to avoid and numb, which can be alcohol, it can be legal drugs, it can be illegal drugs. Very common for people to be hooked on prescription painkillers like Vicodin, oxycodone. And so, but it can be sexual addiction, it can be compulsive shopping or eating. And so ask them, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you try to numb your feelings? And I try to make it sound more like common language rather than being so technical, but I want to get a sense of where they're coming from. And the first conversation with them, you want to establish a baseline, and then later you want to see if they're improving or not doing so well. After a bad night, they might say, how do you rate your overall well-being? They might say a 2. And you say, why a 2? They say, well, I had an argument with my mother last night. I called the crisis line, and it just wasn't a good day. And so what I plan to do is go over some basic information about mental health care. For more information, you can look up dialectical behavior therapy on YouTube, and there are a number of videos on the subject.